Hey, it's Dave here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to turn a PC into a dedicated Linux machine running Ollama and then integrate it directly into Home Assistant so you can run a fast, private, local LLM. This is a follow-up video to my last one where I showed how to install Ollama on your existing Windows PC. So if you don't have a spare machine or want to stick with Windows, I've linked that video down in the description. But if you want something more reliable, more permanent, and something you can leave running 24/7, then this Linux setup is the way to go. We'll go step by step from installing Ubuntu Server, enabling SSH, installing Ollama, exposing it to the network, and finally integrating it into Home Assistant with quick examples to confirm everything's working. Just so you know, what I'm running this on is my everyday Windows desktop that I've temporarily converted into a Linux machine for this video. I've got an RTX 4060 Ti with 8GB of VRAM, an AMD Ryzen 5 7600X, 64GB of RAM, and a 2TB NVMe SSD. Nothing extreme, just a mid-range build that a lot of people will have something similar to. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is download an image of Ubuntu Server and prepare a bootable USB stick. To download Ubuntu, if you go to the following web page, and we're going to choose Server as the option, which doesn't include a graphics user interface, resulting in less overhead. You'll also notice you're going to have two choices. You can either have Ubuntu Server LTS, which is long-term support. It's slightly larger in size, but it doesn't have to be updated as frequently, or you can choose Ubuntu Server, which is a little bit smaller in size, but then it needs to be updated more frequently. We're going to go with the Ubuntu Server long-term support. So if you select download, and then just save it somewhere. Once that's downloaded, you'll need a tool to write the ISO file to a USB drive and make it bootable. In this example, I'm using Balena Etcher, which you can download from this site here. So if we go to download, and then just select the appropriate file for your operating system. I'm creating the image from a Windows machine, so I'm going to choose the top option, and then just save it to an appropriate path. Now, just before you plug in your USB stick, or if you're about to buy one, just watch out and don't choose the cheapest one available, because examples like this is USB 2.0. Make sure it is at least USB 3, because if you've got one of these ones here, they are painfully slow, and it will take almost an hour for the install to go through just to get to the setup page, because the speed of USB 2 is painfully slow. Make sure you choose a drive that is at least USB 3, like some of the examples shown here. Back to Balena Etcher. If you go to the path you downloaded it, I'm going to run it as administrator just in case it needs elevated rights. And we're going to select the ISO file where we downloaded Ubuntu and click open. And we're just going to confirm we've got the correct USB drive selected, and that is the one I need. And now we're just going to click flash. This can take a few minutes, so you might want to just grab a cup of coffee or something while you're waiting. Once that's finished, you can just close the application down and remove the USB drive. Now, before we boot off that USB stick, you're going to need to get to your BIOS from your machine, and depending on the manufacturer, it's probably going to be the delete key or one of the F keys, but you'll have to refer to the manual. Now, the two settings I'm going to start with is the power management. Some of them will have a setting called power on AC or power on boot or something along those lines, so that if the machine was accidentally turned off, or you had a power cut and then the power was restored, you want that machine to automatically turn on instead of having to go over and press the on button. And in this example, you can see there's an option here. Now we're going to go back a few steps and we just want to make sure that it can boot from the USB stick first. Otherwise, it's just going to boot back into Windows. Once those settings are saved, we're just going to come out of the BIOS and restart the machine with the bootable USB stick connected. Now in a second, it should boot up with that USB stick. And from here, we're going to choose Try or Install Ubuntu Server. Now this stage can take some time. Plus, don't be surprised if you see the odd warning or error message at the same time. Again, this may take between sort of 10 minutes and half an hour, depending on the USB drive you're using. Eventually, you should be prompted with your first set of options to choose a language. I'm going to select English UK. And for keyboard layout, I'm going to leave that as it is and select Done. For choose base for the installation, I'm going to leave it as Ubuntu Server, which is a top option. For network configuration, I'm just going to leave this as default and click Done. Now I'm not using a proxy, so I'm going to leave that as it is. For the option of using alternate mirror, I'm just going to leave that as default and click Done. And then for storage, just make sure you selected the correct drive. In this example, I've only got one drive connected, so I can't really go wrong here, which is this one. And now I can click Done. I'm going to leave that as it is and click Done again. Then I'm going to click Continue to proceed. And now for profile configuration, I'm just going to keep this simple and make the name, the server name, and the username exactly the same. So I'm just going to call it Ollama-PC. And then just come up with a password. And then click Done. I'm going to skip the option to choose Ubuntu Pro and just do Continue. And for the option to install OpenSSH server, we want to check that because this will allow us to remotely connect to the machine via something like PuTTY. And because allow password authentication over SSH is checked, I'm going to be logging in as the same user credentials I set earlier. Now I'm going to click Done. And for this option, I'm just going to leave all of those unchecked and then go to Done and then just wait for it to install. Once you get that installation is complete, we're going to select Reboot Now. Now, if you get a message like you can see here, it's because I've left the USB pen drive in. So I'm just going to unplug that and then just press Enter. Now, at this part where you can see it was prompting for the login, I'm actually going to switch to another machine and I'm going to attempt a SSH connection remotely instead. So that way, if you've got this on like a rack server or something, you can just put it in your cupboard, leave it, and you should now be able to connect to it from another machine remotely. Now, before we connect via SSH, we need to log on to this machine and just get the IP address. So I'm just going to sign in. And you should be able to see the IP address just here. Now we're going to launch PuTTY so we can connect to the server via SSH. From hostname or IP address, I'm going to change that to the IP of the server. and then press open. Then I'm going to accept this prompt, type in my username and password, and we're now connected. The first thing we're going to do is just check if there's any system updates. All of these commands will be on my GitHub channel, so you don't need to write them down. Now I'm going to install Ollama. Now it's given me a prompt to reboot to complete NVIDIA CUDA driver install. So I'm just going to type in a reboot command. This will naturally kick me off the SSH connection, so I need to go back into PuTTY and reconnect. And then just type in my credentials. So now that we've installed Ollama and I've given it a restart, I'm now going to install a model. And the model I want is Gemma free because it supports Vision and it's a fairly lightweight model. And I'm going to be using Gemma free :4B. Now that Gemma free is installed, I'm going to run a command to copy a sample image from my GitHub channel. So the way this command runs is I'm using the curl command. I'm then specifying the file name, and then I've got the file path. Now I'm going to click enter. And I'm just going to confirm that the file has successfully downloaded. And you can see there we've got a file called kitchen.jpg, which is perfect. Now I'm going to launch the model Gemma free by using Ollama run command. And I'm just going to reference that image. And you can see there, that has successfully analyzed and given me a description of the image, so we know that works. I'm now going to ask it another question, but this time ask it to list the items it can see. So that's done an okay job. There actually isn't a refrigerator in that image because I know that's behind the camera, and the same for the microwave, but there is a dishwasher there. There's definitely an oven and the kitchen table's there as well. So it's got some of it right, and it seems to have maybe made up some of the other things. Now I'm going to come out of that chat, so I'm going to press Ctrl-C and then Ctrl-D, and I'm just going to clear that screen. Now this next step is optional, but I'm just going to delete the image file that I downloaded. And I'm just going to confirm it's now gone, which is good because it's now showing nothing. So that's perfect. Okay, Future Dave here. I just want to quickly jump in because you may run into the exact same issue I did. While recording this video, I didn't realize at first that Ollama wasn't actually using the GPU at all, and that's why the image analyzing took way longer, like 20 or 30 seconds, instead of the usual 5 or 6 or slightly less. If you notice the exact same thing, it probably means that Ubuntu didn't install the NVIDIA drivers correctly. To confirm whether the GPU is working, run this command. If everything is installed properly, you should see a display similar to this. But if you get this message, then the GPU drivers are missing or broken. And when trying to install the drivers using this command, you might get this error. If you see that, don't worry, I'm about to show you the exact steps I used to fix it. To fix this, we're going to run the following 3 batch of commands with a reboot in between each one. And then finally, you'll be able to run the NVIDIA-SMI without any errors. So we're going to start with the first batch. Now for step 2, we're going to manually install the NVIDIA driver. And if you skip step 2 and you go straight to step 3, where you use the Ubuntu drivers with the auto install command, it's going to throw an error message. Now the driver we're going to install is this command. Now before we run this command, I'm just going to show you where I get the answer from. So if you run this, it's going to give you a list of available drivers to install. And the one we are going to choose is the one that's showing recommended. I'm just going to clear the screen. And now run that command. Now restart. Now we're going to run the Ubuntu drivers using the auto install command. Now while it does show some errors, you can ignore them, and what's important is it's no longer showing the error message about the NVIDIA kernel common 580 must be less or equal to 580.9505-1. Now we can do a final reboot. And now finally, after that reboot and logging back in again, when I run this NVIDIA-SMI command, it's going to show me it running. All right, with that fixed and the GPU drivers working, let's jump back into the rest of the video. Now, because this is a prerequisite video on LLM Vision, one of the stages it will reference if you're using Linux is you need to expose your network. And in order to do that, you have to run this following command where you add a line environment under section service, which we're going to do now. If you miss this step out, then when you type in the IP address of your server followed by the port 11434, you'll get an error like this example where it says this site can't be reached. So I'm just going to paste this piece of code in. Now I'm going to press Ctrl X to exit the editor. And then just press Y to confirm save. And then Enter to overwrite that file. And we're back to the terminal again. Now we need to reload and restart Ollama. Now I'm going to see if I can resolve this page. And you can see now on the top left, it's showing Ollama is running. All right, now that Ollama is running and we've exposed it to the network, let's jump over to Home Assistant and start integrating it. To integrate Ollama, if we go to Settings, then go to Devices and Services, then go to Add Integration and do a search for Ollama. Now you're going to paste in the URL of the server hosting Ollama followed by the port 11434, which is this here, and then click Submit and then click Finish. While we're here, we're going to add an AI task and a conversation agent. So we start with Add AI Task. I'm going to leave most of those settings as default apart from the model, because I want it to be the Gemma free one, which I've already downloaded and installed. And you should see in the drop-down menu, it's got in brackets downloaded because it's one I've set up earlier, which is Gemma free 4B. Then I'm going to click Submit and then click Finish. And I'm just going to repeat the same steps for Add Conversation Agent. Again, I'm more or less just going to leave this exactly as it is. Apart from this part here, I'm just going to change the model. So it's Gemma free. And then click Submit and Finish. Now, assuming you've already got LLM Vision installed, we're going to quickly go into those settings and add Ollama there as well. If you go to Settings, and then Devices and Services, and then just do a search for LLM, and you should have this one here. At the moment, I've got some OpenAI entries, and I'm now going to add an entry for Ollama. So I'm going to click Add Entry. And from the drop-down menu, you should have Ollama as one of the choices, and then click Submit. So from here, I'm just going to put in the IP address that we used earlier, which is the server running Ollama, this time without the HTTPS, and it's already got the port specified. The rest I'm just going to leave as default. As you can see, it's already got Gemma free 4B. And we're just going to press Submit and then Finish. Now, if you did want to use Ollama with Home Assistant voice, if you go to Settings and then select Voice Assistance and click Add Assistant. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this setup because I've covered most of it in my Home Assistant voice video, but the part you're going to be wanting to change is under Conversation Agent, and if you click on that drop-down menu, you should see Ollama Conversation, which is the one I added earlier. And then I'm just going to click Create. I'm just going to come out of that window. Now I'm going to move over to Developer Tools to run an action using LLM Vision to analyze an image using Ollama, and I'm going to repeat the same steps using AI tasks. So if you head over to Developer Tools and just make sure you're on the Actions tab, and I'm going to bounce between UI and YAML mode. So from here, if you just do a search for LLM, and you should have Image Analyzer. For integration, we're going to use Ollama. I'm going to leave the model unchecked, and for the prompt, I'm going to ask it, list the items you can see. I'm going to leave Remember and use Memory unchecked. Then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to select Image Entity as the kitchen. And just before I click Perform Action, I'm just going to show you the image it's actually looking at. It's this one here. So now I'm going to select Perform Action and just wait for it to give me a result. And you can see there, it's gave me a list of some of the items. So it's recognized the kettle. You can see 2 frying pans, some kitchen cabinets, and you can see a sink as well. I'm now going to repeat exactly the same step, but this time using AI tasks. So if you do a search for AI, and the one you want is Generate Data. Task name, I'm just going to call it Test. Same instructions. For the attachment, I'm just going to use the camera of the kitchen. And I'm just going to press Perform, and the response should change. And you can see there it's also given me a list of items. So we know that's working locally with Ollama. And that's it. You now have a dedicated Linux machine running Ollama and fully integrated into Home Assistant. You've got a fast, private, local LLM that you can leave running 24/7, and you're ready to use it with AI tasks, conversation agents, and LLM Vision. If you found this video helpful, smash the like button and subscribe to be notified when more smart home automation videos are available. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.